There are moments in life when everything we thought we understood suddenly changes. The job we counted on disappears. The relationship we believed would last forever ends. The plans we built with care crumble before our eyes. And in those moments, the question rises in our hearts like a storm. God, what are you doing? We've all been there, standing at the crossroads between faith and fear, where trusting God feels harder than ever before. Yet, it's in those moments that trust becomes more than a word. It becomes a lifeline. Because trust is not believing God when everything makes sense. It's believing Him when nothing does. My friend, God's ways are not our ways. His timing rarely fits our schedule, and His plan often unfolds in ways we never expected. But the one thing you can count on, His plan is always right, always loving, and always leading somewhere good. Think about it. Every hero of faith in Scripture faced a moment when God's plan didn't make sense. Abraham was told to leave everything familiar and step into the unknown. Joseph was thrown into a pit and sold into slavery before reaching the palace. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before leading a nation to freedom. Each one could have said, "Lord, this doesn't seem right." But every single one discovered that God's detours are not mistakes. They're miracles in disguise. And maybe that's where you are today. You've prayed. You've waited. You've done everything you know to do, yet the answer hasn't come. You're tempted to think God has forgotten you, but He hasn't. He's writing a story that will make sense one day. When you see how every delay, every disappointment, every closed door was a part of His greater design. So I want to challenge you, don't give up. Don't walk away from God when His ways seem strange. Lean in closer, trust deeper, because what you can't see is what He's shaping behind the scenes. God's silence doesn't mean His absence. His delay doesn't mean denial. And His mystery doesn't mean mistake. This message isn't just a sermon. It's a lifeline for anyone walking through uncertainty. If your heart has ever whispered, "Why, Lord?" then this message is for you. Stay with me until the very end, because by the time we finish, you'll see how trusting God's ways, even when you can't trace His hand, will give you peace in chaos, strength in pain, and hope in the waiting. So lean in, open your heart, and let's discover together what it truly means to trust God's ways. When God's path seems unclear, that's when our faith is truly tested. You see, trusting God is easy when everything fits neatly into place, when the bills are paid, the plans are progressing, and the path ahead is smooth. But what happens when the road suddenly bends and you can't see around the corner? What happens when your prayers seem unanswered, your plans fall apart, and your heart whispers, "God, where are you in this?" It's in those moments that heaven seems silent and our human instinct cries out for answers. We want clarity, not confusion. We want direction, not delay. But God's ways are higher than ours, and sometimes His silence is not absence, it's preparation. He may be working in the shadows, orchestrating a miracle that can't yet be seen. And if you could see what He sees, you would understand that every delay, every detour, and every disappointment is not a denial, but a divine setup for something greater. Remember this, God never loses control of your story, not for a moment. While you're pacing the floor wondering what comes next, He's already written the next chapter. While you're holding onto your plan, He's preparing His promise. Sometimes He hides His hand not to confuse you, but to deepen your trust in Him. Because if you always understood what He was doing, you wouldn't need faith. You'd only need sight. Think about the times in Scripture when God's plan didn't make sense. Noah built an ark when there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Abraham left home without knowing where he was going. Mary received news that defied all human reason. Yet every one of them discovered that obedience to an unseen God leads to blessings beyond imagination. Maybe that's where you are right now. The path ahead looks uncertain, and you can't see how any of this could possibly work for good. But listen closely. Just because you can't see the way doesn't mean there isn't one. God's plan is unfolding step by step in ways your heart can't yet comprehend. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that the moments that made the least sense were the very moments he was shaping your destiny. So when the way is unclear, trust the one who never makes a mistake. Faith is not proven in the sunlight of certainty. It's forged in the shadows of the unknown. Anyone can believe when the path is bright and the outcome is visible. But real faith is born when the night falls, when prayers go unanswered, and when every step forward feels like walking on water. That's where trust becomes alive, where the soul learns to depend on the unseen hand of God. You see, faith is not about understanding everything God does. It's about believing that everything he does is right, even when it hurts, even when it confuses us. There are seasons when God seems to pull the curtain over our understanding. We look around and say, Lord, I can't see what you're doing. But in that darkness, God whispers, trust me anyway. Because faith doesn't need sight. It needs surrender. It needs a heart that says, even if I can't trace your hand, I will trust your heart. Think of Job sitting in the ashes of loss. He had every reason to question, every reason to doubt. Yet he declared, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. That's faith at its purest. Faith that clings when everything else is torn away. And maybe that's what God is asking from you right now. Not explanations, not control, but confidence. Confidence that his hand is still on your life, even when the evidence seems to disappear. We often pray for God to strengthen our faith, but we forget that faith grows best in the dark. The soil of struggle is where roots of trust go deepest. When life is easy, we learn about God's blessings, but when life is hard, we learn about his character. And sometimes God allows the shadows not to frighten us, but to teach us that even there, especially there, his light still shines. You may be standing in a valley right now, unsure of what tomorrow holds, but faith says, I don't have to see the whole road to take the next step. Faith says, God hasn't changed even if my circumstances have. So hold steady. Don't measure God's goodness by the brightness of your day. Measure it by the strength of his presence in your night. That's where real faith lives, strongest in the shadows. And when you begin to walk by that kind of faith, faith that holds steady in the shadows, you'll start to see something extraordinary. The very detours you once resented are the pathways God designed to lead you to your destiny. We call them interruptions, but God calls them instructions. We see them as delays, but heaven sees them as direction. Sometimes the road you didn't plan to take is the only one that leads to the promise he prepared for you. Think about Joseph. One moment he was wearing the coat of favor. The next he was in a pit, then in a prison. To the human eye, his story looked like a tragedy, but to God it was divine choreography. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every lonely night was a step toward the palace. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. And that's how God works. He takes what the enemy meant for evil and turns it into the very thing that fulfills his purpose. Maybe you're walking through a season that feels like a detour right now. You had plans, goals, dreams that seemed so clear, and suddenly everything shifted. You're wondering why God closed a door that seemed perfect, or why he led you down a road that doesn't make sense. But let me tell you, when God reroutes you, he's not punishing you, he's protecting you. He knows where the dangers lie, the things you can't see, the timing that's not yet right. And he loves you too much to let you arrive at your destination unprepared. Sometimes the blessing isn't in getting what you wanted, it's in being spared from what would have broken you. The detour is not a dead end. It's divine delay designed to strengthen your faith and shape your heart. You may not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and say, if that door hadn't closed, I wouldn't be where I am today. If that plan hadn't changed, I wouldn't have met the people who helped me grow. If I hadn't been delayed, I wouldn't have been ready for what God had in store. So don't despise the detours. They're often the very roads that lead to miracles. What feels like confusion today will one day be the clearest evidence that God's hand was guiding you every step of the way. And once you realize that those detours are not accidents but divine appointments, something powerful begins to happen inside you. You start to loosen your grip. You stop trying to control every outcome, fix every situation, or force every door open. You begin to understand that trusting God's ways means surrendering your own. And that's not weakness, that's worship. Because true faith isn't about getting your way, it's about giving God His way. So many of us live exhausted, not because life is too heavy, but because we're trying to carry what was never ours to hold. We plan, we push, we worry, we manipulate, all in an effort to make life work the way we think it should. And all the while, God is whispering, if you'll just let go, I'll take it from here. The problem is, we want God's blessing, but we also want to stay in control. We say, Lord, I trust you, while keeping one hand on the steering wheel of our own life. But sooner or later, every believer comes to a moment when God asks for full surrender. No conditions, no exceptions, no backup plan. Remember Peter walking on the water. As long as his eyes were on Jesus, he did the impossible. But the moment he tried to control what only God could command, he began to sink. That's a picture of what happens when we try to manage what belongs to Him. You can't walk by faith and cling to fear at the same time. One has to let go so the other can live. Letting go isn't easy. It means trusting God with your future, your family, your finances, your failures, every part of your story. It means saying, God, I don't understand it, but I surrender it. I don't like it, but I trust you in it. And when you finally do, something amazing happens. Peace begins to fill the places where panic once lived. The weight lifts, the striving stops. You realize you were never meant to control the outcome, just to obey the one who holds it. The moment you release your grip, God takes hold with both hands. That's when miracles begin to unfold, not because you figured everything out, but because you finally stepped aside and let Him be God. And it's in that moment of surrender, when you finally stop fighting for control, that you begin to understand something even deeper. Every trial you've faced was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to develop you. God uses the very struggles you prayed He would remove to shape the strength you didn't know you had. You see, He's not just interested in delivering you from the storm. He's interested in building something within you through it. Every tear, every test, every painful chapter has purpose. God doesn't waste one single moment of your suffering. The fire you're walking through right now may be hot, but it's refining you, purifying your faith, and preparing you for something far greater than where you stand today. You might not see it, but while you're asking God to take you out of the battle, He's using that battle to train your hands for war. He's building courage where there was once fear, endurance where there was once weakness, and unshakable faith where there was once doubt. Think about David facing Goliath. That victory didn't begin in the valley. It started long before, in the lonely pastures where David fought lions and bears when no one was watching. Every hidden battle prepared him for the one that made history. And that's exactly what God is doing in your life. The unseen struggles you're fighting right now are the very things strengthening you for the destiny that's ahead. So don't curse your trial, cultivate your trust. Don't despise the pain. Discover the purpose behind it. What feels like breaking is often building. What feels like loss is shaping your spirit to carry greater blessing. God is not punishing you, He's positioning you. You're being trained in the fire for triumph in the future. One day, you'll stand on the other side of what you're going through and realize that every mountain that made you cry was the same mountain that taught you to climb. Every tear that fell became the seed of wisdom. Every disappointment, the soil where strength took root. That's why you can trust His ways. Because even when life feels like it's falling apart, God is building something eternal inside you. Something that will stand when everything else fades away.